A space station with a working cannon fired in orbit. A rocket so secret, the Soviet Union denied it existed for 20 years, until it exploded into one of the largest non-nuclear blasts in history. A pair of tortoises that beat every human being around the moon, and made it home before NASA's own astronauts did. None of this made the news when it happened. Most of it was buried, denied, or erased from official records for decades. This is the countdown of 10 declassified Soviet space missions that NASA never saw coming. And stay until the end, because number 1 didn't just embarrass the United States, it rewrote the entire timeline of the moon race, and nobody outside the Kremlin knew about it for 20 years. If you're into space history nobody taught you in school, drop A in the comments right now. Number 10. Almaz, the space station with a cannon. In the 1970s, the Soviet Union launched a series of stations to the world as Salyut, peaceful scientific outposts. Some of them were something else entirely. The military version, codenamed Almaz, carried a modified aircraft autocannon bolted directly to the station's hull. In 1975, after the crew of Salyut 3 had already returned to Earth, ground control fired it, in orbit, unmanned, to test whether the recoil would tear the station apart. It didn't. The gun worked. The West had no idea a Soviet space station had ever carried a weapon until the story leaked in the 1990s. Number 9. Cosmos 954, the satellite that rained radiation on Canada. The USSR was quietly running an entire fleet of nuclear-powered ocean surveillance satellites built to track NATO warships using onboard nuclear reactors. In January 1978, one of them, Cosmos 954, lost control and broke apart over Canada's Northwest Territories, scattering radioactive debris across nearly 100,000 square kilometers. Crews spent months combing frozen tundra for fragments in an operation called Morning Light. What almost nobody knew, this wasn't a one-off accident. It was one of over 30 nuclear reactors the USSR had already put into orbit. Polyus, the Orbital Laser Battle Station. In May 1987, the Soviet Union tried to launch the largest spacecraft ever built up to that point, an 80-ton orbital battle station armed with a megawatt-class laser designed to counter America's proposed Star Wars missile shield. A guidance error sent it spinning a full 180 degrees off course. Its engines fired in exactly the wrong direction. Instead of reaching orbit, it fell straight back into the Pacific Ocean. The failure was so embarrassing, its existence stayed classified until after the USSR itself collapsed. Number 7. FOBS, nuclear weapons hidden in orbit. American radar was built to detect one thing: missiles arriving over the North Pole. The Soviets built something designed to arrive from the opposite direction. A system that could put a nuclear warhead into low orbit and bring it down over the South Pole, from the one direction nobody was watching. Washington suspected it existed for years, off fragments of tracking data, but couldn't confirm it until Soviet test launches made it undeniable. It was banned by treaty in 1979. Number 6. Mars 3, 20 seconds from another world. On December 2, 1971, a Soviet lander touched down on Mars, the first successful soft landing on another planet in history. 5 years before NASA's Viking probes. It began transmitting an image back to Earth. Then, after roughly 20 seconds, the signal cut out and never returned. To this day, nobody is fully certain what killed it. Soviet media downplayed the failure so heavily that most of the world forgot the USSR technically won the race to the Martian surface. Number 5. Luna 15, the secret race against Apollo 11. 3 days before Apollo 11 launched, the Soviet Union quietly sent up Luna 15 with one job: land on the moon, scoop up soil, and rocket it back to Earth before Armstrong and Aldrin could return with theirs, stealing the headline out from under NASA. Western tracking stations picked up its signal. And in an unusual moment of Cold War courtesy, a British observatory shared the data with NASA to confirm it posed no danger. It didn't need to. On July 21st, 1969, Luna 15 crashed into the Sea of Crises. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe, because the next 5 missions weren't just embarrassing, they were nearly fatal. And one of them erased 20 years of Cold War history overnight. Number 4. Voskhod 2, the spacewalk that almost killed Alexei Leonov. In March 1965, Alexei Leonov became the first human to walk in space, what Soviet television didn't show. His suit ballooned so badly in the vacuum that he could no longer fit back through the airlock. He had to secretly bleed oxygen out of his own suit, risking decompression sickness just to squeeze back inside. Then, the capsule's guidance failed on re-entry, and the crew landed nearly 400 kilometers off target, deep in the Ural forest, surrounded by wolves and bears, spending a freezing night alone before rescuers on skis reached them. Number 3. Zond 5, the tortoises that beat every human to the moon. In September 1968, 3 months before Apollo 8, the Soviet Union sent a spacecraft called Zond 5 on a loop around the far side of the moon and safely back to Earth. On board, 2 Russian tortoises, mealworms and plant seeds, no humans. Because the rocket meant to carry them wasn't ready, the tortoises splashed down in the Indian Ocean, alive, having lost about 10% of their body weight, but otherwise fine. For 3 months, they held a title no human being had ever earned. Buran, the shuttle that flew itself, then vanished. In 1988, the Soviet Union quietly built its own answer to the space shuttle, a near-identical orbiter named Buran. Its one and only flight did something NASA's shuttle never managed. It launched, orbited the Earth twice, and landed itself, completely automatically, through crosswinds, without a single human hand on the controls. Then, the Soviet Union collapsed. The program was shelved. Buran sat in a hangar at Baikonur for 14 years, until in 2002, the hangar roof collapsed and crushed it. The rocket that was denied for 20 years. This is the one NASA genuinely never saw coming. To beat the US to a crewed moon landing, the Soviets secretly built their own answer to the Saturn V, a monster rocket powered by 30 engines fired in unison. It never worked. 4 unmanned test launches, 4 catastrophic failures. The worst came on July 3, 1969, just 17 days before Apollo 11 touched down, when it exploded on its launch pad in one of the largest non-nuclear detonations in human history. The Soviet Union didn't just cover it up, it denied the entire program existed for the next 20 years. Every one of these was real. Every one of these was hidden for years, sometimes for decades. While the world believed it knew exactly how the space race was going, it didn't. Which one of these should have been front-page news? Tell us in the comments. And if this is the kind of space history you actually want, subscribe. The Cold War's space program buried a lot more than 10 stories, and we're just getting started.